So Forspoken was on sale for 50% off, and I decided to give the game a shot. And all I'm going to say is, what are y'all smoking? Because this game is not as bad as I've seen from the critics and what people post on the internet. I'm like, it's not that bad. Is it Game of the Year material? Absolutely not. Hi-Fi Rush is a better game. Star Wars is a better game. Octopath Traveler 2, they're all better games than this. But this is not a bad game at all. This is the kind of game where I would recommend at the price point of like 45, 50 US dollars, but nothing more than that. It is a good game. My playthrough took about 15 hours to complete the main story, and I had fun. I had fun. There is some problems with the game, but I had fun. And the first thing that you'll notice when you're playing this game is the load times. When you fire up the game, the load time is instantaneous. It's really like it dives you right in, and you're already poof, you're playing, which is fantastic, taking advantage of the PS5 SSD. The other thing that I'll praise this game for is the traversal system and the parkour. When you unlock more and more skills, you are able to maneuver through the world seamlessly. And quite frankly, as I saw this world, I absolutely loved it. It was fun. It was fun traversing the world. The last time I had that much fun was when playing Spider-Man and you swing through the city of New York. So I thought it was really good. The other thing that I loved about it was the combat system. The combat system is really, really good in the sense that while what you do is not overly complicated, the spells themselves that you can wield are crazy. Especially the later spells, which I won't spoil, but the later spell sets that you can have and what you can do in the game. It's really, really cool. As someone who loves mage classes and spellcasters, the spells in this game and the combat, it was a blast to play. One of the other things that like it was a bit of a surprise to me was how deep the characters' customization is. The way you can customize Freya is actually better than I expected. There's more cosmetic items than I expected, but also when you customize her, you can craft upgrades to upgrade your gear or your stashes and materials. But also you can make builds with her. You could dial up her nails and have different buffs. Her cloak can have different buffs. Her necklace can have different buffs, and all of these things are great when it comes to the game's overall combat, and all of this is accompanied by a great musical score. The musical score isn't the best I've heard, but it's definitely its presence is definitely felt, and I felt that the musical score was also really part of the whole gameplay experience as you're playing the game. Lastly, the on the positive side of Forspoken is I love the fact of that the game introduces you to its systems very slowly. It's very step by step. And this is very positive of the game, which is something that I really liked. But it leads me to the game's biggest flaw. And the biggest flaw with this game comes in the form of the pacing. The game is very, very slow paced. And I mean slow paced to the point where the game only gets interesting at around chapter 5, chapter 6, which is halfway through the game. And in my 15-hour playthrough, you can figure out the math there about roughly how long it took for the game to start getting interesting because of how slow the pacing is. And the pacing is so slow that within the first 2 hours of the game, it could turn people off with how slow it is. And this is accompanied by another issue depending on who you are. That issue comes in the form of the game's dialogue. The dialogue is cringy depending on how you perceive it. I could relate to the dialogue, so I actually found it humorous and funny at times, but there was at times where I did feel it was cringe. And for some people, the cringy dialogue plus the slow pace will really turn you off and be like, 2 or 3 hours in, you quit. And I wouldn't be surprised because that's how bad the pacing is of the game. The other thing that I noticed that wasn't the greatest is when it comes to the game's visuals. So the character models tend to be hit or miss. They're not entirely spot on. And the other issue that I had with the visuals is that while the PS5 version offers multiple graphical modes, the only one that's really worth using is the performance mode in my opinion. The graphical upgrades was so minimal that it's not worth sacrificing 60 frames per second. Especially when the game is the way it is and you fight the enemies and everything else. Having that frame rate is a lot better than having a minor graphical upgrade. Another thing that's hit or miss is with the world itself. So the open world, I thought the open world artistically was fine, and there was lots to do to get upgrades and stat boosts and whatnot. But on the flip side of it, the world lacked any sort of landmarks. There wasn't some giant tree growing out that you could see like an Elden Ring, or like a castle in the background. You don't see anything like that to pull you in. What most of the time you'll find yourself doing is looking at the map, finding another point of interest on the map, and then just going to it. It's not really about how, oh look, you just the joys of wonders of exploration are there, because they lack those landmarks to pull you in. So, and then of course the last thing that I felt was hit or miss was also with the DualSense controller. While the DualSense controller is used, it's basically a gimmick for this game, and it doesn't really do much, in my opinion, for the experience of the game. So it was there, it was okay, it was nothing special in my opinion. The last thing I want to talk about the game that was problematic for me was that when you talk to Cuff, you can't move. The conversation's at a standstill, you literally can't move, you have to sit there and watch, and then pursue after the conversation's over. So that was a little weird and odd choice. It was very annoying, but it was there. And the last thing is, when it comes to the cutscenes, every single cutscene has a circle cut that leads to another scene that does another circle cut. And especially at the beginning of the game where it's very slow, you see this a lot and you can't help but notice it. And I don't know why they did that. I don't know why the game has to do a scene, then immediately cut to another scene instead of one fluid scene. It's an odd choice, and it's something that I noticed during my experience. Overall, though, I had a good time playing Forspoken. The traversal gameplay, I did enjoy the story, even though it was really slow, but I still enjoyed it. The world, the combat, the spells, all of that stuff is fun. The game was fun to play, I'll say that. But the story, I enjoyed it. It wasn't overly complicated, but I enjoyed it. It did add some nice twists, so I did enjoy the story. But the dialogue was annoying at times for me personally, and of course, not being able to move and talk to Cuff got very, very annoying. Is this a good game? Yes, it is. Is it worth $70 US? No, it's not. As I said earlier in the video, I would say about $45-50 tops US. If you could buy it on sale, that's the time to buy it. It is definitely an enjoyable experience, and you can very much have a good time playing this game. Overall, I'm giving Forspoken a 7 out of 10. This is Veteran Gamer, and I hope to see you guys next time.